Hey everybody, Caleb here, and today I've got this 1960s Truetone. This is a pretty cool old guitar. You can see it's electric, got 3 pickups. It's got a little bit of a homemade bridge on there. We're gonna fix that up. Right now it's only got 4 strings on there, and one of them's kind of useless. These are pretty cool old things. So this is from the early 60s. This was made by Kay for Truetone, and this is kind of neat because Truetone was actually for Western Auto out of Kansas City, and that's pretty close to home for me. So I think this is a really cool thing. The first thing I think we're going to do is figure out if these pickups work. That's kind of a big deal on this, so I'm going to go ahead and just plug it in and we'll see. So they work to some degree. The strings are making the tuners buzz quite a bit, so once you get strings on there, those won't buzz near as bad, I hope. So this thing, it looks like the electronics work. Everything's a little dirty on this one, but I think it's going to turn out pretty good. It's pretty beat up. You can see the back here. And there. It's been used and abused a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and set this down, and we're going to start tearing this thing apart and seeing what we can do to make it a little bit better. So the first thing to do pretty much all the time is just to get these old strings off of here. This will also give me some idea how bad the tuners are, if they need work. They're pretty stiff and a little bent up. That should be good. We'll go ahead and cut those off of there. So the nut that was on there was actually a 12-string nut. I think you can see that. So it's got grooves for a 12-string. So we'll put a new nut on this one that's just got the 6 grooves. So this is the bridge that was on there. We'll go ahead and get one that looks a little bit closer to original. So we won't be using this again. So I think the best thing for me to do here is to just take this whole thing apart. The neck is a bolt-on, so I'm just going to go ahead and take it off. I'm going to take the tailpiece off. Because I'm going to try and clean a lot of this stuff up, I'm just going to start disassembly here. I'm not going to do a lot of talking over this. We'll just kind of do a quick montage of taking it apart, and then we'll move on from there. So I've got it this far apart so far. Actually, the neck came off a lot easier than I thought it was going to. And now I can see inside. And it's pretty much hollow on the inside, which is kind of a surprise to me. At the back here, I found there's a ground for the tailpiece, which is good. Then I was looking at the neck, and you can see there's a big, not so good looking shim on there. It probably needs that shim to get to the right angle, but we're going to probably replace this and make it look a little better. At least that's the idea. Right now I'm going to work on the tuners a little bit. So we'll set this aside. Bring the tuners back. I'm going to take these apart just a little bit more. I'm going to try and get this all cleaned up pretty good so that they'll be working really well. Got a little cup for these parts. Yeah, I don't want to put those in there. Set this aside for now. Do the other side. So I'm just unscrewing these little black screws that hold the gear on. Also holds the post on the other side. Dropping them in the bucket. So we'll set all these parts aside for right now. As for these parts, I'm going to try and get them a little cleaner. I've got a toothbrush right here. I'm going to try to just knock off any grime. Right now there's a little soapy water in the toothbrush. And then we'll dry these off all the way. We really don't want to leave any water in this. And we'll re-oil these before we stick these back together. So I got all these pieces brushed off now. I'll put them in here and set them aside for now. I'm going to work on the plastics a little bit. So I'll get the soapy water a little closer, and I'll just take the same toothbrush here, get it a little soapy, and then just do the plastics. Try and get them cleaned up a little bit here. While I'm at it, I'm going to start doing the knobs as well. They've got a little bit of grime on them, especially in the grooves and such places. Now these ones, I'll just go rinse all this stuff off in the sink. The plastics, you know, they're not such a big deal. I'll just set them aside and go rinse them in the sink. I just wanted to show you kind of how I was doing this. And I'm just taking this toothbrush and some warm soapy water. And it really lets me get into all these grooves. And I think there you can already see, here's one I haven't cleaned yet, and the one I have, and it already looks so much better just being cleaned up. So I'll go ahead and finish up cleaning these plastics, and then I will bring you back to work on whatever it is I'm going to do next. So I've been cleaning little bits and pieces up for quite a while now. I am going to try and take one of these pickups out. I'd like to clean these screws up a little bit better, and it'd be a lot easier to do if I could take them all the way out. I don't know if this is going to end up being a bad idea, but I am going to try it on one. Maybe see how hard it is to put it all back together. So I went ahead and just took this all the way out of here. Just kind of wanted to see on the inside. There's some numbers, letters, some kind of serial numbering on the back side of this pickup. I'll zoom in and see if you can see it. I think you can see it there. There's red numbers that I can maybe read, and then some black numbers that have been kind of cut off. I guess that was upside down for you, but red numbers are, I don't know, the first one's kind of gone. It's probably a 9, 4, 2, 8, 6, 5. So we can actually clean this whole thing up now. Try to make those a little cleaner, get rid of some of the grime. I'm going to do all of these pickups, but I'm going to take them out one at a time. I think it's just going to be better for my brain, so I don't, have to think about what goes in where. Obviously, they only come out so far, but it's a little bit more keeping things orderly if I just do them one at a time. I'm going to go ahead and clean these screws up while they're out, and I'll try and clean up the mounting point for the screw as well. I'll just do that with some 1200 sandpaper. I might check this up in the drill and then just kind of sand polish the top, and then I'll take some of the semi-chrome polish and polish the tops. I'll do that for just about everything, get it nice and clean, and then I'll show you kind of, here's what it looks like before, and I'll show you the after as soon as I get it done. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but I think you can see it in the reflectiveness. This is the before and this is the after. And it's a much cleaner shine on this one. So I'll clean up the other one and then we'll look at how we're going to clean up the metal cover on the pickup. So I've been working on this for a little while. I polished this up. You can see there, this one's polished up pretty good. This one I just barely got started on. I've got these put back in here. I'm probably not going to take them out again unless I have to. It was a little bit of a hassle getting this one back in here. What I've ended up doing here is just taking a small amount of polish, putting it on here, and then I've got the Dremel tool out, and I've actually been using it to buff these, and it's been working pretty good. I've got it set, pretty slow, and just buffing them out. And they turn out looking pretty good. I think you can probably see there, this one I haven't touched at all, and these two are getting awful shiny. It's looking good, so I'll do the next one. I've kind of figured out if I spread it out just a little bit before I start, really buffing, then I don't tend to fling the polish everywhere. So those are looking pretty good. So we're kind of at the point here where we need to be thinking about what am I going to do to the finish on this guitar. I think the big thing here is fix damage but keep patina. So, fix the spots that are damaged, but stuff that happens over time. This is an old instrument. The stuff that happens over time is supposed to happen. For example, I think a lot of this is patina. It's how it was meant to wear. But this missing piece here, I would call this damage. It's actually missing a whole piece in here. I'm going to have to fill this with something and then make it black. So there's kind of a very thin line I have to tread here about what do I fix. So I'm going to think about this piece here, what I can find that's going to fit in here, match up good, and look good. But as well, I've got this big piece here, and I think this is damaged. This looks like someone started scraping at it, taking finish off, and I'm not real sure how we're going to attack this yet. I've got some ideas. We'll have to see what I can pull out to get this to work. For the body purposes, I think this is going to be the next thing I do. But because I haven't really decided yet, we'll set the whole body aside, and we're going to work on the neck a little bit more. So I've got the neck here. I had already worked on cleaning up the headstock a little bit. You can probably tell that logo is looking a little better. And I cleaned the ferrules up as well. To do this, I just took a little bit of wet 1200 sandpaper and real lightly just knocked the dirt off. And that cleaned that up really good. The ferrules I polished up the same way I've polished up all the metal parts so far. I think the first thing we're going to do to this neck now is take this old shim off. It doesn't really match. It's a very different color, and it sticks out a little too far. I think I'm going to knock it off and see what I can do to make a little bit of a nicer one. I'm going to try and knock this off with a chisel. My worry is that it was put on here with something that's not going to be fun to take off, and I can already see this looks like some kind of epoxy or something that's not going to be fun. Before I start tearing into this, because I think the best thing to do here is just going to be for me to carve it off more or less, I'm going to get some measurements on it so I have some idea what the nicer one we're going to stick on here needs to be. So I got the calipers out and I started measuring this, and on the thickest end it sits just under 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to say about 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to start working on knocking this thing off of here. I've got the chisel out, and this is going to be a pain because of what this was glued on here with. It looks like some kind of epoxy. I think you can kind of see there when it's this grayish color and it comes off pretty white, kind of like right here. It's usually the epoxy, and that makes it kind of difficult to take it off. So I'm going to work on this for a little while. I may end up just knocking this off in chunks, but that's okay. I've got the measurement that matters, the height on this end, so I'll just work at taking this off for a little while and bring it back when I've made some progress. So what ended up being the best method was just chiseling this off of here. And somebody will probably say, is it really worth all the work to just replace this shim? And to me it is. I think it's going to, I can make it look a lot better with a nicer wood shim. I think the shim needs to be a hair taller anyway, so to do it all in one go would be good. And I'd like to just wood glue one on rather than the epoxy glue that put this on here. That way if anyone else ever had to change it, they could take it off a lot easier than I'm taking this one off. So I'm just knocking this off with a chisel and a mallet. I'm trying to keep this clamped down. It keeps it from moving too much. I say trying to keep it clamped down because my clamps keep wandering off. Getting real close. As I've gotten closer, I've started using the finger plane, and you can see it's starting to bring up this kind of grayish color, and that means I'm coming into the epoxy stuff, which is good. really close now. Just trying to be really careful with this. I don't want to damage this at all, so that's why I'm going so slow at this, just using the small little finger plane. I could obviously use a larger plane, take a larger bite, and move a lot faster, but I really don't want to mess this up. I'm just about done here. I've started taking the rounded end X-Acto knife and just scraping the parts that I need to get the rest of the epoxy junk off of there. It won't be too long now and I'll be done with this, and then I'm going to start working on a shim. The shim that I'm going to put on here isn't going to be this shape anymore like this one was. It will be the shape of the neck pocket. So we'll have to do some touch-ups on here, but since I was already going to touch up the edges, that won't be a big deal. So I'll get finished with scraping this junk off of here and get started on a shim. So I've made this shim. I've got a little bit of footage of me working on this. And I've got it marked on the bottom, which will be the face that's facing outward. It's maybe a hair tall still, but I can still take a little height off the back of this even if after I glue it down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We'll get that glued down so it's starting to set up, and then I can work on something else while this is drying. So we'll put some glue down. And then we'll put some glue down a little faster. Put a little glue on the shim side just to be safe. I want good coverage here. This needs to stay on there pretty well. Okay. I'm going to get this aligned. This is a little oversized, this shim, so I will end up shaving a little bit off of here, which is good, so that it matches up perfect. And then we'll just put some clamps on here. I got leather on both sides of this clamp, so I don't leave any impressions. Getting a little bit of squeeze out, that's good. I can do for just a little more pressure. That squeezed out just a little bit more glue, so I think that's looking good. We'll give that some time to set up, and then come back, shave off that extra bits. Right now I think we're going to work on the finish on the body. So I had talked about the difference between damage and patina, and on the top around the edges where the finish is flaked, or around the pickups, I would call that patina. But like here on the bottom where it looks like it's either been scraped or maybe it's even water damage, this is definitely damage. So we're going to try to address this the best we can. I'm going to tape this up and do a light sanding to it, and then we're going to take it out and try and airbrush some black back on here. We'll see how that goes. So while the body's drying, there's a small amount of shaping that needs to be done to my shim to make it fit the neck really well. So we're going to do that. And then, as soon as I'm done making the shim fit perfectly, we'll take it out and put some black on it. So it's the next day. We're now 24 hours away from when I want this video to come out. So I've got a lot of work to do today. I went ahead and glued a piece of mahogany into this little gap that was here. It's a little big, so I'm going to have to shave that down. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to start with the chisel with that. This might be kind of hard to show. I'm going to try to not run the chisel into the pickup, so I got to be careful with this. I'm going to change tactics a little bit here. I've got the scalpel blade out, and I'm going to see if I can't carve it a little bit with this. It might be kind of hard to see on camera because I've got to see what I'm doing very well here. That's actually really good. I'm surprised at how really good it turned out, honestly. I'm hanging into the neck pocket just a little bit, so I'm going to try and trim that off. That patch there turned out pretty good so far. I'm going to just paint this black with a paintbrush. I'm going to use the same stuff I used on the bottom. That's just so that it doesn't really draw your eye. You know, it won't be perfect because it's a patch, it's a fill, but it won't draw your attention near as bad as this bright color on the black. So that's what we'll do. So I'll let this dry, put maybe a couple more coats on here, and while this is drying we will finish up the neck so that hopefully we can get it, you know, ready to go back on here by the time this is ready for it to go back on here. So we'll give this some time to set up and we'll work on the neck. So I'm going to talk about this neck here real quick. There's a lot of times you see me grab the file and start going at this, and there are some things that I can see. I don't know if you can. I've got a little tiny viewfinder, so it's hard to see if you can see them, but one of the things that means I need to level these, regardless of how far off they are these grooves in the frets. Because the frets are grooved, they actually wave across, So this way they have dips where the strings have worn them. That pretty much decides that I'm going to file these to some degree because I need to get the high spots down to the low spot. That's where the string actually touches. So the high spot does nothing but get in the way. So I'm going to file these, and that's just the way it's going to be. I mean, these grooves have to come out. The wave has to come out. The low spot is where it needs to be. That's where it's hitting the string anyway. So I'll take it down to just about that spot, recrown them, and then they'll be fine. They've got plenty of life left in them that way, and it's not taking that much off of it. So we're going to do that. And in case you were wondering, I did already check neck straightness, and it was looking good. So, alright, so those grooves are just about gone, and that's where I'll stop. I'll come through now and crown them. A lot of people like to put Sharpie on the frets when they're crowning them. They'll take the Sharpie and run it along so that as you're crowning them, you can see the line get smaller and smaller. I can see the reflection, where the difference between this file and the other file. So I can see the line get smaller and smaller without having to put any color on there. It's all about what you're used to, and learning to do it this way, I think, just speeds me up. And speed is good, both because I can get more through, and also when it comes to customers' work, they don't have to pay as much. So, something that just popped into my head that I was going to share with you, that I had kind of forgotten I was going to share with you, was for this shim that I put in here, when I was measuring the old one, I was thinking 1/4 of an inch sounded awful big, and it is, but what I'm realizing is if you kind of follow the neckline here, someone has actually if you follow the neckline here, someone has actually taken off some of this neck heel, so it was actually affixed to something someone else had done to bring it back. And then mine is just maybe only really a 50,000th shim from where it started, where it should have been. So that sounds much better to me. And you can see it there. It actually looks much closer to the way it should have been in the beginning, when before it got cut off. It kind of had this angle to it. So that shim is actually moreover bringing it back to where it was initially, and then adding a little bit more. We're going to polish these up now. I'll start with some 400. I'm not going to worry about the board too much because it's pretty filthy, so I'll clean it up with a razor blade when we're done. Looking good. We'll do 600 now. Now some 1200. And now I think we've done enough fret work on camera, but I will go through and polish these up with these micro polishing pads, and that will take them to a nice mirror shine. So I'll get that done and then I'll bring you back. So I just finished up using the razor blade to script the board, and I thought I'd show you just a little bit of that. So I just take it and I work it back and forth and go across the radius of the board to keep the radius of the board. And it knocks off any old junk. So I'm done with that. Now I'm going to oil the board. And as per usual, I'm going to use this Be Good wood oil. It's pretty good stuff. I have liked it so far. Put a couple dots on. And I'll just rub it in. Take a dry cloth and then rub off the excess. And then there you go. brand new looking fretboard. Looks really good. So now what we're going to do is get a new nut for this and start shaping it. I actually have a nut for it. I don't remember where I sat it, but I've got a new nut for it. We got to start shaping it and start getting grooves in this so that we can string this thing up. So I'll get the stuff together to do that and we'll start on it. So I've got a nut rough shaped to go on there. It's a little big in several directions, but that's okay. I think it's going to be best for me to just get it on here and then start looking at the more precision fitting. So I'm just going to do like 2 dots of this super phatic glue. Just enough to tack it on. And then we'll let that sit for just a little while to tack up. That way when I come to file on this, it shouldn't move too much. And then we'll come back at this here just maybe 5 minutes or so, and then this should be good. So the nuts had some time to set up and it's well attached now. I've gone ahead and marked some little pencil lines and they're evenly spaced. I just kind of marked the outside ones where I thought they should go, then measured between it and divided by 5. And then marked the things so they're equally spaced, or they should be pretty close to that. Now I'm going to take the nut files, which are gauged files, so they go, by what string it is. I've got 6 of them, and I'm going to get those started here. What I find helps is to put my fingernail on the nut itself, so I can run the file up against it and kind of keeps me going straight. And now's the time where I can do like minor adjustments, so if I need to go in or out one direction, now's the time to do that. So I'll get these started so I can get a good idea of what they're going to look like distance apart wise. And then I'll take them a little deeper after that. So I'll set the file where it needs to go, run my fingernail up against it so it won't move, and then start filing in. So now I'll take a good look, and actually I think it's looking really good. I think the spacing is looking good. And I think where they are, where they're going to line up is going to be just about perfect. So I will start to take those a little deeper. Another thing that is kind of important here is keeping everything in the right direction. Generally the angle that you want to file at is about the same as the headstock angle. So I'm trying to keep that same angle, and the highest point obviously needs to be on the fret side of the nut, that's where the string leaves the nut so it intonates properly. And the other thing to remember when you're doing this is you kind of want to point these slots towards the tuner that they're going to go to. It helps the string guide properly and it doesn't bind as much. So basically you want to work from the front of the nut and point it at the tuner it's going to. Just a couple of things to remember when you're filing nut grooves. So I'll get these actually started this time now. Get them a little deeper. I'm not going to take them to final depth till we string this up because I don't really know how deep they need to be yet. But once I get the strings on there, I can fine-tune this to a perfect degree. This is quite a time-consuming process, really. That's why we don't really like to start over on a new nut, unless I have to. A new nut can really take, it can take every bit of 2 hours to get right. And that's a long time for, you know, a setup. So those are pretty good for now. I think we'll fine tune them once we get the whole thing strung up. I think now I'm going to reinstall the tuners and give those a good oil. And then I think the neck is done. This doesn't have a truss rod cover. It used to. I'm not going to worry about it. I don't think it's that big of a deal. You know, if the person who owns this wants one, it's not that expensive. Just get one and put one on. So for now, we're just going to not worry about that. We'll put the tuners back on here, and then we'll move on. So I think the last thing I've got to do before I can actually string this up is get this bridge fitting. And this is the new bridge that I ordered. It's a little bit closer to the original style. The original one was a wood adjustable bridge. It's not quite the same, but it's definitely much more original looking than other options. So I've just got some sandpaper sitting on the top, and I'm just barely moving this back and forth, trying to get the feet to take the shape of the top. And a good way to test to see if you're there, or getting close to there, is you can turn it over, and you can actually see where it's taking off on the feet. Like on this one, it's taking off here and here, so that center isn't touching yet, so we're not quite there. So I've got more to take off. It's about the same on this side, mostly on this end. So I've got more to take off of there. So we'll keep going at this. So that bridge is making good contact now. I've started putting the knobs back on here. I tightened up all the nuts for all the knobs. I'm going to move them all to be in the same position. It's kind of arbitrary on this. You know, I'm sure lots of people have lots of preferences as to what way they point. I'm just going to make them all the same. Close enough for me. And we got the selector switch on there as well. So we're doing good here. I think we're done here. One more thing I am going to do. I'm going to take the file to this saddle, round off all the corners, make sure it's nice and comfortable, because this is brand new. So I think if I round them off, they should, you know, it should feel a little more worn in. That's going to be a fairly simple thing. I'm just going to basically be knocking sharp corners off. I think one, that'll make it a little more comfortable, and two, it'll make it look a little bit older. So both of those are good things for this. So I'll do that, and then we will attach the neck back to this. So the neck's on there, and I already did this, but I'll kind of show it on camera. The angle actually isn't looking too terrible. It's a little low, maybe even still, but actually this bridge isn't all the way down. So we got, I think it's gonna be good. It's looking good. I mean, it's looking better than it did, and it's a vast improvement. You can see over here with the black, actually having it being black in there instead of having the color stripped off. I think, you know, it doesn't look perfect. Obviously, if you're looking for flaws, you'll see it. But as a passing glance, or especially if someone were playing it, I'm not sure you'd really see the issues. And that's really what I was aiming for. So I think we're going to get some strings on here. I got to go get the electric guitar strings, and we will string this thing up. I probably won't film stringing it because it's not really all that much to show. I'll get it strung up, and then I'll bring you back and show you what it looks like. So I've got it strung up, and it's actually tuned up to pitch. I didn't check the intonation yet, which I need to do, but I noticed the nut's awful high. So I think we're going to work on the nut here real quick. I'll spin this around. So I've got my pick that I use. It measures about 17/1000 of an inch, and I usually stick that in here, and it should just about touch that string, and it doesn't. And it doesn't do that on any of them, which is kind of expected because, you know, I just eyeballed this nut. And I'd rather it be high than it suddenly be super, super low. So what I'll do is I'll take these one by one. I'll lower the pitch. I'll knock the string groove down, tune it back up, and then check it again. And this is going to take me a little while. This is where a lot of the time in this nut work comes from, is doing them individually. And you really have to do them at pitch because that gets you the tension that's going to be there. If you do them, you know, below pitch, you may end up taking too much off because, well, it wasn't buzzing then, but now with the tension that's pulling, it might change. So, anyways, this can take a little bit, so I'm not really going to film it, and I've shown it a couple of times already recently. So I'll go ahead and finish this up, and then I'll see what we can do from there. So I've got the nut set at a really good height, and the strings are sitting good. I checked the intonation, it was a little flat, and just as a quick refresher, if it's flat, you need to move the bridge forward. If it's sharp, you need to move it back. So if it's flat, the bridge is too far. If it's sharp, the string is too short. So that's kind of a good way to remember it. And I think we're done here. I think this thing is good to go. There's a couple of things I didn't really talk about. There's a couple of pieces of binding missing right at the end of the neck that I didn't do anything with, and I'm not really going to do anything with, mostly because I don't have any binding. And this is another one of those. This is just like the Yamaha that I just did, the 12 string. This is actually in the same set. So, you know, this is one of those things where if we want to change that out, we can, and it's not all that big of a deal. I can come back and do this, but for the purposes of this video, I think we've done more than enough to this. I think it's looking really good. I think it's going to, you know, I know it plays well now. The action's sitting low. I haven't checked what it is at the 12. So let's go ahead and check the height at the 12, and then I'll go over and play it. It's sitting about 60 thousandths of an inch on the treble side. About 70 thousandths of an inch on the bass side, which is, I think that's fine for an electric guitar, especially if something of this age. You know, it's probably a little higher than some people have their electric guitars. Some people have them really, really low, but I think that's fine for this. I think we're good here. I'm going to go get set up to hopefully try and play this for you. So I'll see you when I'm playing it. So we got this thing up in really good playing order, and I think it does look a lot better, you know, especially, you know, at this distance. You know, you just the quick looks and with the strings on it, and especially if I was playing, I think it'd look really good. Once you start looking at it, you'll see stuff doesn't exactly match, stuff's been repaired. But I think a lot of the damage has been concealed well, and I think that's the biggest part of this. So I'll play it a little bit for you and give you some idea what it's going to sound like. we did a little bit of work to this thing, you know, from getting that logo looking good, cleaning up that fretboard, cleaning up the body, making all those pickups nice and shiny. It was pretty dirty. We also, you know, improved the look of this neck joint quite a bit. And the bottom, we improved the look of the bottom quite a bit. I also put this end pin in, so this is a replacement end pin. And I think overall this thing's looking really good. I hope you enjoyed watching this. You know, this took a little bit of time, and I'm on a little bit of a time crunch. I got to get this video edited so I can get it out. So I'll get to it, and I'll see you later.